So a quick little bit of background on my story. I was involved in a car accident some years back, and I was having severe muscle spasms. And I had tried everything, Soma, different type of muscle relaxants. And those things are very short term, first of all, because they're highly addictive. And none of them worked. I mean, I had mild relief at best, but nothing that justified taking them prolonged. And like I said, you can't take them prolonged anyway, I mean, without serious problems. And I knew that. So I was prescribed Valium. And I tried Valium, and it worked great. In fact, it worked better than anything I had taken. It greatly reduced the spasm, and I was able to take it for a prolonged period while I went to physical rehab and rehabilitated my body. And then came to a point where, I don't know, maybe several months later, where I was like, okay, I think I'm going to stop taking this. And I just stopped. I hadn't consulted my doctor, and I was a younger man, and I didn't really know much about it, what I was doing. And it was kind of a careless mistake. I should have approached him and set an appointment, which I had planned on setting an appointment and discussing these things. I just sort of jumped the gun and said, well, I'm just going to start taking it. I'm just going to stop taking it right now. So what happened was within, 24 hours, 48 hours, I suddenly had a severe panic attack out of nowhere. Never had anything like that. Just sitting there. I remember I was talking with a friend. We were laughing about a joke, and something just like a switch flipped, and my skin began burning, and I had this sudden intense fear of death, like I was going to implode or black out or something. And I remember jumping up and just feeling utter panic, like something bad is about to happen, and I don't know what. I'm about to die, And I remember running into the house and just sort of putting my hands over my eyes and just trying to hold it together. Well, I went back and seen the doctor, and he said, "Oh, you've got an anxiety disorder, so you really just need to take these." And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. I never had that before. It seemed like an effect of not taking it. And he goes, well, yeah, that could be that. But, most likely you had a pre-existing anxiety disorder. And when you got off the meds, it just sort of brought that back out. It became more pronounced. It was never really brought my attention that this was a side effect of withdrawal so much, which I think it should have been. But nonetheless, okay, I have an anxiety disorder. Wow, that's unfortunate. I guess I got to take these. And while I was taking them, I still was getting benefits from physically. I had some terrible back injury with spasming and things like that still were persisting a little bit, and the Valium helped for sure. So eventually I had been on them for a prolonged period, and every time I would come to the doctor, he'd say, you just need to take a little more. You just need to take a little more. Well, I said, I'm getting anxiety still coming through this. Like, I think it's related to side effects. No. You just need more. You have a pre-existing anxiety condition. Eventually, I hit the wall to where they're saying, just take more. And it was getting up to a dose that was just unhealthy. And I thought, well, where does this go? I'm about to hit the wall. I'm not going to be able to go up any higher. And then what do we do? And pretty much that's what happened. And he said, oh, okay, let's put you on antidepressants. And I said, okay, hold on, wait a minute. This is all spiraling out of control here. This is going too fast. This is not even why I began taking this thing. Now suddenly I'm about to be put on antidepressants, and I had read a lot of bad things and about SSRIs and potential side effects. And at this point, luckily, I had already started pursuing my bachelor's in clinical psychology, and I think I was just about finishing that up, and I had already was moving toward the field of psychology. I knew I wanted to do something in that. And I was studying psychopharm and all these things, and I was learning more and more about this. And someone introduced to me the Dr. Ashton's manual, which I'll post a link here, and you guys should really look at this because this is going to come up multiple times during this discussion and these videos. Dr. Ashton was a physician that was working with people coming off benzos in a hospital setting, and she observed, hundreds, maybe thousands of people going through withdrawals. And she created this manual for the weaning process, how fast you should go, what to expect, dangers, things that help. She put this really comprehensive manual together that was really wonderful. Anyway, I found that, and I started reading it and learning about it, and I started saying, oh, this might be what's going on. That essentially I had hit a wall, had built up all this tolerance, and now the drug was giving me all these side effects of withdrawal. So then it became this very frustrating thing where I was going back to the doctor and I was talking to people in the field, and they were saying, there was this great split of, is it symptoms of withdrawal? Is it pre-existing anxiety now surfacing? Well, the two are very different. One is pre-existing, and one is a byproduct of taking this thing. The consequence of it is, if it was pre-existing, then I must keep taking a thing. Or versus if it's a byproduct of this thing, then maybe there's an alternative method here. What do I do? Do I wean off? I get better? Do those side effects go away? Like most things, it's like being addicted to opiates, right? And then you go to get off it and you start feeling really horrible and you start having body pains and everything, all these withdrawal symptoms. And they go, well, see, that's the pain. That's why you took it. That's the pain that was already there. But really it wasn't. And maybe there might have been some there, but the pain that you're feeling is withdrawal. So they just keep prescribing it for you. They say, well, just keep taking it. You need it. So long story short, I end up studying a lot about this. And I was going through school for psychology, and I was learning about a lot of holistic methods, psychodynamic methods, cognitive behavioral therapy treatments. And I decided I'm weaning myself off this. And I'm going to give it a period. And I'm going to follow Dr. Ashton's manual. And if I'm wrong and anxiety's still there and I can't get better, then I'll go back and I'll look at the antidepressants or whatever I need to do. But I got to give this a shot because I didn't want to be on meds. So the first thing I started doing, as directed by Dr. Ashton's manual, which luckily I was already taking Valium, is I went down and had my doctor prescribe it in smaller dosages, I think like 2 milligram tablets. That way I could start breaking things down in an easier way. Like if you have a 10 milligram tablet and you want to break that down into, 1 milligram increments, it's going to be very hard to cut a 10 milligram tablet in 10 little portions. So the 2 milligram tablets were much easier. You're just breaking it in half, and if you had to break 1 milligram in half, you can have a half a milligram wean. So if you wanted to wean 1 milligram per week, you could literally break that tablet in half and take a half twice that week or something to that effect. Just made it much easier. And this is all directed in Dr. Ashton's manual. So the idea was to wean very slowly. I think she directed 1 milligram, maybe 2 milligrams a week, but nothing quicker than that. Sometimes half a milligram. Sometimes you might even have to just stop weaning for a few weeks because the symptoms get too bad. When they get too bad, what do? You want to run back and take more. Well, if you take more, then you backtrack. You slide back down the mountain, so to speak. So it's better to just take baby steps to completely weaning versus the alternative, which was doctors notorious for just ripping people off of their benzos within weeks, even off high dosages. They do it just enough, just long enough period that you won't die of a seizure, essentially, but you'll have horrible side effects, and there's almost no medications out there that even help with that. They'll try to, on top of that, they'll try to throw you on another medication like an antidepressant, which could have additional side effects. So you're going through this withdrawal side effect that's unavoidable. It's just going to happen. And now you're having new side effects from this other drug, which could help a little bit or could greatly hurt you in terms of side effects, collective side effects. So yeah, the first advice is if you're on Clozapine or Xanax, you're going to want to convert to Valium because Valium has a longer shelf life, a longer therapeutic window, and it can be broken down in smaller increments. And of course, don't do any of this, obviously. I don't think you can rewrite your prescriptions or anything like this without contacting your doctor and really getting him on board with this plan and finding out if that's what's best for you, of course. Don't do these things on your own. That could be very dangerous. You could have a seizure and literally die. Okay, so 1 to 2 milligrams per week. Further advice, avoid other alcohol and drugs like caffeine. Caffeine can really shoot you into a panic attack if you haven't figured that out yet and you're going through these things. Avoid caffeine. I know you love coffee. It's going to suck, but you got to get better, so you got to stop drinking it for a little while. Marijuana, I've heard mixed things about that. Some people say it helped them with their anxiety. Some people say it caused them instant panic attacks. There's different strands of marijuana. If you're someone who has a medical card or access to a shop where you can explore different strands that are specifically designed for treatment of different things, maybe that could help you, or with sleep. Because you're going to have a host of withdrawal effects if you haven't already started weaning. I'm assuming most of the people that are listening to this are already in the belly of the beast right now. You're already going through withdrawals, or you're just started, or you've been going through it, or you're somewhere on this path, and I'm sure you're having panic and anxiety and sleeplessness and metallic taste in your mouth and ringing in the ears and tingles and just horrible nightmares and burning skin. It just sounds like a damn poltergeist. You've been taken over, like the invasion of the body snatchers by some alien host, which is sort of what it's like, a prolonged period of being abducted. Some horrible nitmare. Another thing I want to talk about is alcohol. Of course, it's going to help with withdrawals initially, but then the consequences, it'll drastically heighten the severity of withdrawals. And that's because alcohol biologically resembles benzo. It's very similar. Neurologically, it's very similar in the brain and actually what it affects, GABA and things like that. It's very similar, and its withdrawal alone, just alcohol withdrawal on its own as a drug, is very similar to Valium or benzos, creating seizures and all these things that you're experiencing, very similar to an alcoholic who's coming off alcohol. So avoid alcohol at all costs. You're going to have to, basically, weaning off of this drug is a whole change of lifestyle. I kind of equate it to being the Count of Monte Cristo, where you're sitting in that tower, in this dark tower with a little tiny window that you can't even see out of, and it's cold, and you're barely clothed, and every year on your birthday someone comes in and whips you, meaning it's going to be a long, cold, crappy process. But like the Count in that film, in that book, he utilized that time to sort of learn and better himself and escape in different ways, so that way when he could finally leave that dungeon, he had something, he was sort of reborn. He had a cathartic experience through that. And I think that's really important, because it's what you do with that time that's really going to be helpful to your healing and to life after benzo, because there is life after benzo, and you got to get prepared for that. So there's two modes. There's weathering the storm, which is what we're talking about, and then there's going to be redirecting your life and your lifestyle to have a life after it.
Hey everyone, I've just released my new book on benzo recovery called The Powers Manual, Benzo Recovery Guide. Many of you have asked for it, and finally I'm able to offer it to you. The Powers Manual encompasses everything I know about benzodiazepine dependence and recovery, stemming not only from my personal experience with benzo recovery, but combined with my knowledge as a soon-to-be licensed doctoral-level clinical psychologist. The therapeutic techniques and tools I use to make a full drug recovery are included in this book. The Powers Manual covers everything from symptoms management and taper plan to help with sleep, diet, exercise, and even uses cognitive behavioral techniques to address the pre-existing condition of anxiety and depression. Recovery is possible, but it will require us to fight, not flight.